Hey, what's up? It's Justin from MAKESUPPLY. In today's video, we will be doing a step-by-step walkthrough of a laser cut and hand-stitched bifold wallet. This design is available as a free SVG file, so you can load it up into your laser cutter and cut it out the same way we're doing here. And if you don't have a laser cutter, it's also available as a standard print PDF file that you can print it out on your home printer. These files, as well as all the materials and tools that we use in this project, are linked in the description below, so go ahead and check that out, and let's get started. Okay, so go ahead and open up the SVG file in your program of choice. So I'm using Adobe Illustrator, and later I'm going to be importing into a program called Lightburn. If you have a Glowforge or something else that has a proprietary environment, you can just probably upload this straight into that software. So here is what the file should look like. You're going to see the two body pieces for the wallet, the two bottom card slots, and the two T-slots. This is set up with RGB red and RGB blue. So the red is the holes, we want to cut them first, and then the outside cut is RGB blue. From there, I broke out the design into two different files. So I'm going to be cutting on two leather panels that are 12 by 12. I'll show you them in the next step. So here is a 12 by 12 artboard, and I have my outside panels on one and my inside slots on another. I'll show you those next. So this is pretty self-explanatory. I just have my two wallet pieces here, and I save this file. For the inside, I have my two card slots and my two T slots, and here I just took a little logo mock-up I made and made it RGB black for scanning and engraving, and I just put it on the card slot here. So when you're engraving, you can, if you want to add a logo, you can kind of just throw it on any piece that you want, really. So now everything is ready for me to import into my laser software. So now it is time to set up the laser cutting parameters, and this is what I'll be using Lightburn for. So if you have if you have a Glowforge or a Universal or something like that, or an Epilogue, they probably have their own environments. And if you don't, then something like this, I have a Boss Laser, and I use this program here called Lightburn. So I'm going to go ahead and you're going to go ahead and import your pieces. So I'll start with the outer just to take a look at it. And you can see it looks just like it did in the last file. And I have my parameters here. So I can't tell you what your parameters are. All the laser cutters are different. Depends on the power, the wattage of your laser, and all kind of stuff like that. So you have to experiment with cutting and engraving to see what works for your material and the design and your laser. But I did a couple pre-cuts, so I know exactly what I need. And my red is set up, so the red holes here are set up at 18 millimeters a second and 50% power, and my outside cut is set at same, 18 millimeters a second and 50% power. Next, we'll take a look at the inner cuts. And again, this is the exact same thing as the other file, except for the addition of the engraving. So the engraving, I'm going to do you set it as scan or fill, and I'm doing 330 millimeters a second at 13% power, and my line interval is 0.10. Again, you can mess with that to determine how dark and how detailed you want your engraving to be if you're doing one. So all of this looks good. Now it is time to take a look at our leather and send it to the laser cutter. So here is the leather I'll be using for this project. Like I mentioned, these are just two 12 by 12 squares. So this is, I got this off Amazon a while ago. They come in a pack of these two pieces. I had never had any good use for them, so I figured I would do it for this project. But basically, they're oil tans. This one's kind of like a rustic, crazy horse looking leather. It's about, I don't know, 4 ounces probably. It's nice and firm. So I'm going to use this as the outside of the wallet and the inside, the main inside panel. And then this is a little bit darker and it's a little bit floppier. And this is what I'm going to use for the card slots. And you can see I already did a test So what I did was I just wanted to see what kind of settings I need for the engraving and for the cutting, so I just cut a little square. I've got plenty of space on here, so I know I'm not going to run out of space. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to be using. You can use whatever leather you need. I suggest using something a little bit thinner, probably in the 3-ounce range is great. But if it's a little bit thicker, that's no problem for this project. All right, let's load it into the laser and get started. I'm going to start by cutting out the card slots and doing the engraving on the card slot. I will put a camera in the laser for the next step, but I can't turn everything on while I'm talking because it's just too loud. So if you want to mask over the leather with masking tape, a lot of people do that, and that helps to prevent, burn marks on the top of the leather. I don't like to do it because I think it leaves too much residue on the top of the leather. Even if you have like a really low tack tape, it leaves a little bit too much residue for me. So what I do is I just run the cut and run the engraving just as it is, and then I will just clean it up with a healing balm and a conditioner, and it looks pretty good to me. So let's go ahead and run the file. So here is what your cutout wallet should look like. Outside piece, inside piece, and your 4 card slots. Here is the slot that had the engraving on it. You can see it's a little messy. Maybe. Let's see how I can get this better on the camera here. Yeah, it's a little dirty. So what I'm going to do now is just going to do a quick once-over with some healing balm. I feel like any light conditioner works fine at this step. It doesn't have to be this specifically. So first I'll just start with my finger. And then go ahead and get a soft cloth, cotton microfiber, something like that. You can just wipe off the residue. Just like that. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and just do a once over on the rest of these pieces here. Okay, so let's move on. Go ahead and take your outside panel here and just put it off to the side. The same with your bottom 2 card slots. We don't need those right now. So for this step, you're going to decide if you're going to be using glue or not. You do not need any glue to do this whole project. But if you want a nice connection between the leather, I suggest using a leathercraft glue or what I'll be using here, which is barge cement. This is probably a little overkill for this project, but this is what I have here. So what we're going to be doing is first taking one of your T-slots and then placing it down on these, see these holes here? On the middle of the panel. We're going to be going ahead and attaching this like this and sewing that down. And for the thread, like I mentioned in the inventory, I will be using this. This is called main thread. This is a wax polycord. This is the .035 size, and it is the color gold brown. Being that this is going to have more of a rustic aesthetic, you know, it has larger stitching holes, oil tan leather, I figured a nice rustic thread would make sense for this project. But you can use any thread you have. I suggest something a little bit on the thicker side, maybe like a 0.8 millimeter or even a 1 millimeter would be fine. Okay, so I am gonna glue this down. So what I'm gonna do is take my scratch awl and just scuff up the leather right around the holes there. And then apply a little bit of glue on both sides. So when you're putting these holes together, just make sure that the holes line up nice and good. You can just use your scratch awl to make sure you're hitting the table when you put it through. Okay, now that you had a minute to let that glue dry, we will be doing our first line of stitching. So go ahead and get some thread on your needles there. We are going to be doing a saddle stitch. If you need help with saddle stitching, I did a video a couple years ago. You can find it in my video feed. There's also tons of other good videos on YouTube for saddle stitching. It's pretty simple. Just look up one of those and you can go ahead and get started there. Just a warning, it is a fact of life when stitching laser cut holes that you're going to get your thread a little bit dirty. I will link up a video I did about a month ago here where I go over some tips for keeping your thread clean. This will be pretty important, especially if you're using a lighter color thread like a white thread or something like that. Okay, so now we have stitched down our T-slot there. So now it is time to find your left side bottom card slot. And now we are going to glue this one in place here, if you're gluing. If not, you can just stitch. So go ahead and scratch up a little bit around the holes, all the way through here, all the way up to here. And then add some glue there, and add some glue if you're using the barge cement on both sides, and then pop it into place. So at this point, if you want, you can also put a little bit of glue on the ends of these T-slots here. These flaps, because we're going to be gluing that down as well. Just make sure they line up nice with the holes that are under them. And once you let that dry for a minute, go ahead and put them into place. Again, use your scratch awl or something that can fit through these holes to make sure you're hitting the table underneath. To make sure the holes are nice and aligned. Just like that. And then put your card slot into place. Another quick and easy way of checking out your hole placement is hold it up to the light, and you should be able to see completely through. Okay, so what we're going to do is let that glue dry. You can see our setup here. We're going to let that glue dry, go take a water break, then we're going to come back and do another line of stitching. Okay, so we let that dry for a couple minutes, and now it is time to do our next line of stitching. So you are going to be stitching this inside line right here. And that's it. You're going to stitch from the bottom to the top. Do not stitch all the way around this. That is going to give you a whole lot of problems because we have to still attach the outside piece. So just from that bottom hole there up to this top hole here. All right, there we go. So we just finished that line of stitching. I back stitched 2 times. See that? And now I'm going to trim this. And there is our stitching. Okay, so at this point, we need to do the other side. So you're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing we did, but the other side. So you're going to go ahead and glue and stitch your T-slot in place, and then go ahead and glue down your bottom slot there, and then stitch that inside line. All right, so I went ahead and finished that other side. So now your wallet should look like this. Now it is time to stitch the sides. So if you've never made a bifold wallet before, you might be confused at why one piece is longer than the other. Well, to facilitate the folding aspect of the wallet, the outside needs to be a little bit longer than the inside piece. So it doesn't matter what side you start on because they're both the same. But what you're going to be doing is turning over your inside panel, or your outside panel, sorry, and then lining up the holes like that on the inside. And then you're going to glue and stitch one side down. So let's do that now. All right, go ahead and line up all your holes, make sure they're nice. You can really push down on that glue, let it dry. And then what you're going to do is you're going to stitch from the top hole down to this hole. just finished stitching around there. Let me trim this off here and then we can take a look. And we have one side down. Okay, so now let's do the other side. The other side is the same process, except it's a little bit more difficult because you have to deal with the excess material on the outside piece. It's going to want to fold up. So I highly suggest getting a couple binder clips. And what you'll do is you'll put your glue down. You'll start on the outside here, match up your holes, and then slowly walk your way down towards the bend. And you'll see it'll kind of develop this little part here. And just make sure your holes are accurately aligned, and then you can clip them with the binder clips. Okay, so go ahead and get your binder clips ready. And now you just have to really pay attention to your alignment, that's all. You can use your needles and your scratch awl to kind of hold it in place, and then go ahead and put down one of your clips. And then you can slowly walk your way down. I like to put one on the corner. All the way down to the bottom there. So now you're all clipped up, and you can let this dry for a little bit and then go ahead and stitch that side. Well, it wouldn't really be a Make Supply video unless there was one section that had broken audio, and here we are. So in this section, basically I just finished stitching and I'm trimming the thread and burning the ends and checking out our newly stitched up wallet. Now you have to decide what you want to do with the edges of the wallet. So they probably have a little bit of gunk from the laser cutter and from the glue seeping out from the edges. So I'm going to sand. And while I would normally use the edger and then burnish, since I'm using an oil tan, I'm not going to do that. So all I'm going to do is sand off all of this gunk on the edge and leave it as is. And for this last clip here, we're just checking out our completed bifold wallet. I'm going to throw some credit cards into these slots. I don't have any cash at the moment to put in the top, but it holds cash just fine. And if you have any questions or comments on the design, you can email me directly or you can leave a comment below. And I hope you enjoyed this laser cut bifold video, and thank you for watching.